All right, welcome, Kelly. It's good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And we're actually recording this the day after Election Day. So I acknowledge that this next question I'm going to ask you might be a little bit different than how things normally are. So the
Yeah.
question is, how did you start your day today? And if today was an anomaly, you can share just in general how you like to start your days.
Yeah. Well, today was definitely an anomaly. We were up very, very late last night, as I'm sure everyone else was. So I'll share more of what a typical day is for me. Usually I wake up in the morning and I try to give myself like at least 15, 20 minutes. I make coffee and I use my Bible app and I try to meditate and just pray on the day and really just kind of get in tune with how I'm going to serve, right? And how I'm going to show up in that day to be of service in the highest, way possible. So I'll do that for like 15, 20 minutes. And then I start organizing and kind of planning for the day and just kind of getting my energy right and preparing. And then usually my first, work hour of the day is on Miracle Hour with my team. So my sales and marketing representatives across all of my companies in the portfolio come together every morning to really work on like profit producing activities, what our message to the market is going to be, what we're going to do that day to move the business forward. So kind of dive in with them. And then from there, every day is different. And I have my walking pad next to me here in my office. So try to hop on the walking pad and, start getting some steps in. But after that, some days are like deep work days. I theme out my week. So some days it's back-to-back calls and I'm on camera all day. And other days it's I'm going to go inward, I'm going to write, I'm going to record, I'm going to create, just depending on what the theme of that day is.
And you mentioned you start your day with more of this introspection and prayer and kind of just like this contemplative time. And I know you've been an entrepreneur for a long time, which we'll get into in a little bit,
Yeah.
but has faith, has spirituality kind of always been a part of how you approach your day? Or is this something that has come in later in life? Just what has that been like for you?
Yeah, my spirituality journey has had a lot of twists and turns. I've been a person of faith my entire life, but I think it's taken a lot of different forms over different periods in my life. There were times when I was working in corporate where I would go to church, in the morning before I drove to the office. And there were times in my life where faith wasn't a big part of my daily routine. And, I'm in a season now where I'm really making a concerted effort to put that first in my life and to make sure that is the first thing that I'm doing every single day. And so it's evolved and changed so much over the years. But I will say, although it's looked different and it's taken a different position, I guess you can say, in my life over the years, I do think faith has been one of the core things that has gotten me through all of the high highs and all of the low lows of entrepreneurship. And I think that that's made a huge difference for me in kind of continuing on the path.
So we'll get into some of those low lows and high highs. And I know, it's no small thing to build your company from 0 to 8 figures with no debt, with no investors, no outside funding. And there's so many entrepreneurs out in the world now, a lot of women entrepreneurs, which is wonderful. And what do you feel like if you're talking to someone who's newer in business and who's wanting to even get to 6 figures and maybe one day 7 figures and she's bootstrapping, like what do you feel
Mhm.
like are the key maybe 1 to 3 principles that have led to the success that you've experienced?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think first of all, whatever you decide to do with your business and, with your life, I think looking at your work as more of a vocation instead of like a transactional business, right? Because I think that there's going to be days where you're going to put a lot more into it than what you're going to get out of it. And then there's going to be days where you feel like you got, the gift of a lifetime and you have those outlier events that, really help you. But I would say, playing the long game and really looking at your work as like your ministry. How are you sharing your gifts with the world? What can you do to impact people each day? And when you talk about, if you're starting a company from scratch, and how are you going to get that company off the ground, and how are you going to kind of break into the space, visibility is everything. It's absolutely everything, because even if you have the best product, service, program in the world, if no one knows about you, no one can buy from you. And so visibility can come in lots of forms. One form of visibility, doing podcast guesting for almost, I want to say probably 8-9 years of my, time as an entrepreneur. I've done 2 shows a week, every single week, in addition to my 2 shows a week, every single week. So visibility, whether it's live streaming, posting, creating stories, doing summits, speaking on stages, doing podcasts, whatever that looks like for you, people have to see you, they have to hear you, they have to have a way to assess your expertise and the value that you bring. And so if I were starting over today, my absolute top priority above anything else would be visibility combined with creating compelling content that really made a difference for people to get them to take the next step and kind of move through my ecosystem towards the sale.
Yeah, I love that. So that's so true. And one of the things that happens when you're in business for a long time, like you have been, is like you mentioned, you have these high highs and these low lows. And I know that I've heard you speak on your podcast, which I enjoy, about some pretty significant lows that you had in recent years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you're willing to speak about what happened for you.
Yeah, I mean, which low do we want to pick? There are many, right? The higher the climb and the bigger that you want to build, the more risk that you're going to endure and the more challenges that you're going to face. And I'm always completely transparent with people about that. I am someone that I really think it's important for people that have had success in entrepreneurship not to glamorize it. I love being an entrepreneur. I love being, wealthy and creating money and making a difference and all the great things that come with building successful companies. But there's a lot of things that also come with building successful companies, including lawsuits, which I've been through, including betrayal, which I've been through, including failed partnerships, which I've been through. I could list out every single thing that you hope and pray doesn't happen in your business, and it's probably happened to me. And I'm not unique. So if you talk to anyone who runs an 8 or 9 figure business, they're going to be like, yep, been there, done that. Yep, had that. It's par for the course. So, I've gone through, significant challenges with the business, and I've rebuilt from them, and I've learned from them, and I've grown from them. Everything from failed launches and losing money to making the wrong hires that have backfired to dealing with lawsuits. I had, I'm not going to say the name, one of the biggest magazines in the world, everyone knows who they are, come after me for using the word entrepreneur in the name of my business. I almost lost my entire company over it, had to rebrand, start over from nothing. So like I could go down the list, but I think it's just really important to understand that if you believe you have a gift and if you believe you have talent and you can make a difference in the world, that you just have to be prepared for battle. It's just what comes with building a successful business. And I think it's worth it because the freedom that my family has, the freedom that I have in my life, the income that I've been able to make, all the positives are worth the sacrifice of the negatives that come along with that.
So when something like that happens, like a big wave strikes of, you get the letter that there's a lawsuit coming against you, or and you're kind of absorbing the shock, you're absorbing the blow. And of course it has a strong impact on our nervous system, on our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, and our personal life. Like, what are the things that you do just as personally as a woman to manage that level of stress when that's happening?
Yeah. Well, I would tell you, I walked a lot of miles for those couple years.
I bet.
Every day I walked miles and miles and miles. And I think walking and praying is literally like what got me through that. Honestly, honest to God, I think my faith and I think getting out and walking and getting sunshine and getting my steps in and getting fresh air every single day is the only way that I got through it. And I think everybody has different coping mechanisms for how they deal with stress, how they, regulate their nervous system when they're going through things. But those were 2 of the most powerful things for me. And, I think also it's just like, what is the alternative? right? So you can show up and you can fight and you can keep putting one foot in front of the other, or you can give up, right? So I think it's just like continually bringing yourself back to like, it's a lifetime journey of sharing your gifts. It's not a sprint. There's no end goal. There's no like final destination. It's just how are you sharing your gifts with the world and what can you do to be of service? Even when you're going through things, there's always so much that you can do to be of service.
And I feel like that goes back to what you were presencing in the beginning about how it's a vocation.
Yeah,
And that
exactly.
takes it out of being transactional. And I
Mhm.
love you saying it is a lifelong journey.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
this is our calling. This is what we're here to do. And like you
yeah,
said, like, yeah, there's what is the alternative? We can't just turn around and stop. We have to
exactly.
find a way to keep going.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then professionally, restructuring like that instance that you shared with the magazine is like restructuring your whole business.
Hmm.
How did you handle that level of stress and uncertainty at the professional level?
I mean, for me, I just had to keep in mind that I was a leader and that I had to show up for my team and I had to keep, putting one foot in front of the other and do the best that I could to keep myself together so that I could lead them effectively. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say, on the other side of these challenges, and there likely will be more to come,
Yes. Mhm.
but how would you say that you and your life are different now?
Well, I think that being that my faith was such a huge part of what got me through that, I think that I have such deeper faith now. I have such a strong sense of confidence and trust that I'm being guided, I'm being supported. I will work through whatever comes my way. It's all ultimately in God's hands anyway. And I think that that really, really crystallized for me a deeper sense of confidence in my faith. And that has allowed me to be a much better leader, a much calmer leader, a much more passionate leader, because I just have a deeper sense of trust. And I think that's the power of bringing your faith into business, whatever that faith walk looks like for you. And it's different for everyone.
Yeah, and of going through those challenges, it's like we build our capacity
Yes.
each time that
Yes.
happens. And each time that we
Absolutely.
that we trust and we come out of it the other side and
Yeah.
we're okay or even stronger than we were when we went into it.
Exactly. Exactly.
I know that a number of women who are listening to this are newer on their entrepreneurial journeys. And I
Mhm.
know some of the women that I work with struggle with how to keep going, even just when there's like smaller things that happen in one's life, like even this week, the election week in the US, or
Mhm.
getting sick, or having someone in your life who's sick, or even someone who passes away. Like,
Mhm.
how do you balance showing up and doing the things that you need to do to keep your business moving forward with the inevitable setbacks that will come up in life? Like, what would you say to those women who are just starting out and kind of learning how to navigate that dance, which is really
Yeah.
never ending?
Yeah, it's never ending and there's always something, right? You're never just going to have like this perfectly calm, serene, the table is set and everyone's just waiting. It's never like that, right? And so it's really important to learn how to show up and perform even when you have multiple dimensions of dynamics that are happening personally and professionally. And I think there's two sides of that. On one hand, I think you have to learn how to show up in all seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall as a leader, and realize how much your being present and being grounded impacts your ability to ultimately serve and impact and influence others and to build a good business. You have to be able to be visible and be strong even when things aren't going well or when you have other things going on in your life in order to build a strong and stable business. But the flip side of it is you have to learn how to listen to your body. You have to learn how to be present with yourself and know when you need to pull back and know when you need to take a break and know when you need to give yourself grace. And I think women in particular are just so hard on themselves. And that's what holds them back a lot, is that they beat themselves up for making mistakes or having failures, or they question their worthiness when things don't go well, or they have a failure. And I think those are the things that stand in our way more than anything. It's not an exterior competitor or the environment or whatever the case. It's what goes on in our own mind. So I think it is doing that dance of, you can't let every little whim of what comes up take you off course. You have to be able to maintain focus and control. And at the same time, you have to be connected to your own mind and connected to your own body, and know how to listen to your intuition, and know how to listen when you do need to take a step back and you do need to give yourself grace.
How do you know when it's time for you to do that, to step back and to give yourself grace versus just to charge forward?
Yeah. My body tells me, right? Like, so there's a difference between feeling something, like I feel intimidated, I feel scared, I feel overwhelmed, whatever the case. There's a difference between I feel and therefore I don't want to, versus like my body is telling me I need rest. My body is telling me, my body's giving me a warning sign that if you don't slow down, I will decide to slow down for you, right? So I think there's that difference between the discipline of being able to push through those feelings, which, let's be honest, most days you're not going to feel like doing what you need to do, right? Versus that, like, mind body connection of knowing. And I feel like I've developed a really good sense for myself of knowing the difference between I feel versus I feel, right? And I think it's really important to be able to tell the difference between those things and know how you need to respond in each kind of scenario.
And I appreciated what you shared earlier about how the bigger the risk you take, kind of like the bigger the game that you're playing, the bigger the challenges you're going to meet.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think, you building your companies to 8 figures, that involves taking a lot of risks.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard it said that the more success you want to have, the bigger risks you need to take.
Yeah.
What has given you the courage to take these risks, and how, because it's almost like you need to think bigger to even know what risks to take.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how
Because
is
if
that
you're,
process for you?
yeah, I mean, I always look at things from a 10x perspective, because strategically, if you try to solve the problem as it stands today, you will keep reinforcing staying exactly where you are. You actually have to think bigger to actually look at what the next level problem is that you need to solve, to work backwards so that what you're doing is actually moving you forwards. And that's one of the most important things that I learned in business, is like, if you just solve that little problem that's in front of you right now, you're just going to stay right where you are. You have to think at that 10x level. It's not like a platitude. It's actually like a strategy in order to solve problems that will propel you to that next level. And I mean, as far as building the confidence to do that, like, failure is inevitable in business. So you're either going to fail small, you're going to fail big, but the only thing that becomes definitive is if you quit. So it's like the only thing that will take you out of the game is if you quit. No failure is going to take you out unless you just say, okay, I'm not going to learn from this and then pick myself back up and keep trying. So for me, that gives me confidence because I'm kind of in control of those levers, right?
Can you give like a more specific example of 10xing, like looking at a 10x version of where you are now, and like kind of reverse engineering from there, like what that problem would
Yeah.
look like? So, like, so I'm thinking of an example of like a woman listening who's maybe at 6 figures and she knows one day she wants to get to 7 figures,
Yeah.
or maybe you have an example from your own life.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I always look at the client number, the revenue number, the profit number, the impact number, and I 10x it from there. So when we, achieved, $10 million in my business, I immediately started looking at how are we going to get to 100 million. And I knew I didn't want to do that in just my one business that I had built, because I didn't want to have that level of I didn't want that volume of clients because I didn't feel like we could maintain the integrity of the service delivery at that volume. And that's why I really started building out all the other businesses in my portfolio, because I wanted to make sure that I could maintain the integrity of servicing the business and keeping the client load at a level where we could keep the quality of delivery while we scaled. And so if I hadn't been looking at that, I would have just been running myself right into a wall that I ultimately wouldn't have been happy with. And so it's really important to look forward, whether it's at how am I going to service 10x more clients, or how am I going to 10x the team, or how am I going to 10x the revenue. That's what's then going to guide you to, well, if this, then that kind of thing.
And is there a place where your intuition and your prayer, your
Mhm.
spiritual connection comes into that 10x thinking,
Oh,
or
yeah.
comes into like,
Oh,
what is
yeah.
that? Like,
Oh,
what does
yeah.
that look like for you?
I use my intuition in everything. I mean, most of what I do is on my gut. And then once I listen to my intuition, then I look at, okay, then how does that strategically play out and what does the plan need to look like? But I leverage my intuition for absolutely everything. And from a prayer standpoint, it's really about being open to the will for your life versus being forceful in dictating, this is what I want, and now I'm going to pray to get it. It's reversing that and saying, thy will be done. And, let me be a vessel, let me be a channel, for your glory, and help me to be making decisions that are in alignment with that, and help me to know, what that looks like. And just, I ask for the guidance of the Holy Spirit a lot in my work and in my speaking, because I speak so much. And I think that's a really powerful guide that we've all been given.
And I know, I think maybe it's been like the past couple of years, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with the timing,
Mm-hmm.
but you've started to talk about this concept of kairos.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share more about what that is, and why you feel called to share more about that right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, so I've always been a person of faith. I never shared it. My first 10 years as an entrepreneur, I kept my faith completely private. I never talked about it online. I never shared it publicly. And, as I was growing and growing and going through all the things I went through as a leader, as a CEO, as a builder, and I kind of started realizing like, I don't think I would be able to do this without my faith. I realized that like I was really doing a disservice by not sharing how big of a part of the whole picture that was. And so I just made a decision that I'm going to dedicate all of my businesses to God, all of my work to God. I'm going to put God first. I'm going to include God in everything that I'm doing. And I specifically started talking about Kairos because I feel that a lot of leaders are looking outside of themselves for answers that they really only can get inside of themselves. And Kairos is really about opening yourself up to where you're truly being called in your life with your gifts, and what that can look like.
What is kairos?
So kairos is a biblical word. It's a Greek word, and there's multiple different meanings for it. One meaning is God's timing. But one way that kairos is used is it's referred to as a critical moment in which God comes into your life or a situation in this crucial way that leaves you forever changed. And the reason why I started using Kairos and rebranded one of my programs from The Inevitable Millionaire to Kairos was it really was about helping leaders to transform their hearts and to bring their faith into their business, and to say, let me know where I'm being called next. Let me know where you're trying to guide me to. And I saw so many business owners post COVID really feeling lost and detached and frustrated and overwhelmed in their businesses, not loving their companies anymore, that really needed reinvention, that needed to step into a new era. And I wanted to show them a pathway to do that that was really about answering calling and really about creating true alignment, from the inside out, versus just saying, oh, I'm going to burn this business down. I'm going to start this new thing over here. And then you're just reinventing and recreating the same problems that you had in the last thing in the next thing.
And then it's also like, then you're just pulling these like external levers without
Yeah.
actually tuning into, is this aligned with my vocation?
Yeah.
Is this
Yeah.
what I'm supposed to be doing now? Is
Yeah.
that like how I'm
Yeah.
supposed to serve now?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it brings in this concept of spiritual entrepreneurship, which it
Mhm.
feels like the business landscape is radically changing right now. And I've also heard you speak about that, just noticing a
Mhm.
big shift, even at the start of 2024.
Mhm.
Can you talk about what you're noticing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that online entrepreneurship, the online consumerism has moved into a deeper level of maturity. So what that means is, whereas people over the last 10 years were new consumers online, they're now very educated consumers online. And so whereas uneducated consumers are just buying based on the end result, you say, I help people with ABC, XYZ, and they say, great, I want help with that, and they buy your product. Whereas an educated consumer has already bought multiple products in that space. They're much more knowledgeable. They want someone that they align with their values, that they actually feel passionate about the brand, that they want to connect to. And there's way more that they're looking for and evaluating and making a buying decision. So there has been a radical shift, and it's very organic and natural and in congruence with the evolution of how long have people been buying online. And as the online world goes deeper and deeper into maturity, people are evaluating many different dynamics and reasons why they will or won't buy from someone, which is why I think it's more and more important to share your values, why you do what you do, what is inspiring you to do what you do the way that you do it. It's no longer just this like single dynamic of problem solution. It's problem solution, and are you really, really the person that I want to learn from, grow with, attach myself to, and so forth.
I think that also goes back to what you were sharing earlier, is the importance of visibility.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is that these times are calling for even a deeper level of visibility. Like
Hmm.
you have allowed people to see the depth to which your faith, your spiritual connection has been intertwined
Yeah.
in a very significant way in your work. So
Yeah.
even just bringing deeper levels of vulnerability and
Oh,
exposure,
for
like
sure. Yeah.
showing people the deeper regions of
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, which has been super uncomfortable for me. Like, I would prefer to not talk about anything personal. I would love if I could just talk about business growth strategy all day long, every day, and never talk about anything personal. I really value my private, personal life. I'm a very private person. I have a great home life with my family. I've worked very hard to like keep that part of my life like protected and separate. But I feel like it doesn't do justice to not share the reality of kind of the more full scope of not just who you are and how you do business and how you get the results that you're getting, but also what goes into the way that you lead, right? So, not my preference, but I feel like it's very important and required in this season.
How has your audience responded to this pivot into Kairos leadership and you sharing more of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had an unbelievable response. I cannot believe how many believers. And it's funny because people were like, oh, we knew. Like like we knew just because like how you are and who you are and what you teach and blah, 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 and so I think a lot of people are also in a season of rediscovering their faith. And so I think they're really looking for leaders that are integrating their faith into their work so much more than they were 5 years ago. But the response has been amazing. And I think for me, I finally got to the point where I really didn't care. I was willing to risk it all. It didn't matter to me. I wasn't like, I was at the point where I was like, if I lose 50% of my audience because they don't like me talking about faith or talking about God or whatever, I finally had the courage to say, like, I have enough faith and I have enough trust that even if I lose, he will replenish so much more. And I think that was the turning point for me of like having that trust and having that courage. And I think because of that, I I've seen the reward of sharing that.
And as I'm hearing you say this, it's making me think more because spirituality is a huge part of my life, and it has been for my whole life, but even more so my adult life. And while I'm not affiliated with a particular religion, now as an adult, I was raised Catholic, but now it's more of like a metaphysical connection to
Mhm,
God. And prayer is a huge part of my life. Like,
mhm.
I do not know who I would be or where I would be without
Yeah,
prayer. It's, that's how I start my day. It's
yeah,
interwoven in everything that I do in my work. I don't do anything without praying about it.
yeah,
And as I'm hearing you, I'm wondering, like, am I talking about this enough? Because it's, I feel like it's infiltrated in everything, but maybe it's not being shared to the level that would bring people deeper into that
yeah,
process.
yeah. Yeah, and you don't realize how much impact and influence what you sharing has on people. I've had so many people. I had someone say, I went back to church for the first time in over 10 years. I just bought my first Bible. I've decided I'm going to integrate faith into my business. Like I've heard and gotten so much feedback from so many people just saying like thank you, like you doing this gave me the courage, or it made me change my perspective or want to make this a part of my life. And I'm not here to influence anyone's perspective. I'm like, listen, this is my perspective. I'm not here to like recruit, right? I'm just here to model what I'm doing, and you need to choose your path and choose what's right for you and do it in a way that's in alignment for you. But regardless, even if you're not trying to do that, just by you doing that, you will positively influence people in all different ways. And for me, my hope and my goal is that if someone's Jewish, that they go even deeper into their Judaism. If someone's spiritual and they're non-denominational, that they go even deeper into their spirituality. Like all paths are trying to make their way back to God, right? That is what we're all craving. That is what we're all doing. And so I think by leaders sharing their faith, regardless of what your faith journey is, I think when done well, it invites everyone who observes you to go deeper on their own journey, even if their journey looks completely different than yours. And that's certainly what my hope is in sharing what I'm doing.
And so, with this maturation of the market that we're experiencing right now, and
Mhm.
people just being more
Yeah.
discerning
Yeah.
about what they're saying yes to, what they're saying no to, maybe
Yeah.
even taking more time to make decisions, in addition to being more open about our values and really what we stand for, and um, letting people know us at a deeper level, are there other things that you would recommend really emphasizing during this big transition?
Well, I think two big things, and I could give you 100 things, so I'll give you two specific things that I think can be helpful for everyone listening. The first one is repetition. Repetition is unbelievably important in good economies and in easy markets, but in a market like we're in today, it's 1,000 times more important because repetition builds trust. And when we see so many people that are constantly changing their message and changing their offer and changing, what they're sharing, it breaks trust. And so repetition is more important than ever. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is leading with, customer results and wins and successes, and, the kind of how you do what you do behind the point of sale, I think is more important than ever because we are in a trust recession and people have had far more experiences, good and bad. And so they're looking for providers that prioritize that and that are really putting an emphasis and focus there.
And as you kind of look back at your career, like, do you have any regrets or kind of big moments where you see, oh, I wish I would have done something differently now that you have the luxury of hindsight?
I mean, for the most part, I'm the kind of person that, like, listen, I fail and make mistakes all the time. So I try not to like harp on the failures and mistakes. I try to extract the wisdom from them. So there are so many things, obviously, that I, would look back and say, oh, I wish I had had this or done that or, been that, whatever. Um, but I have very few regrets, meaning I think many times everything is leading you to the next step, right? And so even when you make a mistake and things don't go the way that you want them to, if you didn't make that mistake, you wouldn't learn the lesson that you actually needed to learn in order to get to where you're trying to go. So I don't look at it so much in regrets as I do in lessons. And I try to be very focused on extracting every piece of wisdom I can from every set of challenges that I go through, because I think you're given challenges in order to help you learn and grow.
And what role has mentorship played for you in your journey as a business owner?
Yeah, I mean, I was very, very lucky in my corporate career. I had a mentor for almost 15 years, and he completely changed my life. And he saw bigger things for me than I even saw for myself. He was a champion for me, an advocate for me, coached me, invested in me, pushed me, held me accountable. And so that radically changed my life. Absolutely. And, since then, I've obviously had different coaches and mentors and stuff like that, but no one that's had that level of impact on my life. Now I read more books and I kind of pull ideas from all different people. But yeah, finding a good mentor, especially in the early stages, is super crucial. Super crucial.
I know one of the things that's really common amongst women is men too, but I think even more so with women is like coming up against this edge around building our capacity to earn money and
Hmm.
building our capacity for wealth.
Hmm.
Are there specific things around money that have helped you to kind of expand your capacity to earn and to receive and to kind of command higher prices as you've grown?
Yeah. Well, I mean, money and power in the right hand is what changes the world, right? For me, looking at my own business and my own life, I've been able to build, a well and water project in Nepal. I've been able to do the same in Malawi. We donate continuously to Charity Water. We're trying to help solve the global drinking water crisis, where we still have over 1 billion people that don't have clean drinking water. I think what we have to remember is that in order to make big impact and in order to create meaningful change in the world, you need resources, you need money, you need the ability to have power and influence. And those are all positive things, right? And when those things are in the right hands, great things happen. And so playing small because you feel guilty about making more money, it serves no one. It serves no one, right?
And I know some women listening as they're hearing this, like one of the limiting beliefs that they're working with is that it's not spiritual to make money. And
Hmm.
here we are conflating
Yeah.
spirituality, business, money, service.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that limiting
Yeah.
belief of it's not
Well,
spiritual to make
my
money?
yeah, well, that's just it's a silly belief, right? It's a belief that we need to let go of. But I grew up actually with a father that believed that, and he worked for a nonprofit, and we lived at basically just above the poverty line growing up, and there were 5 kids in my family, and my parents were constantly depressed and fighting and arguing because he wanted to dedicate his life to working for a nonprofit because he felt that he had to be poor in order to be spiritually rich. And we all suffered because of that. And so my whole life has been dedicated to the idea that you can both make money and do good. And those things can go hand in hand. And that's how we create positive change. And the best example I can give is like, my family could never think about giving back or doing for others or being of service or doing anything to impact the world around us because we were in fight or flight, struggle just to survive. And so when you're poor, you can't focus on being of service. My parents couldn't focus on being of service, they were focused on surviving. Right. Whereas being someone who's built a successful business, I get to, when the hurricane just happened, I got to make big donations to different organizations immediately without thinking about it. I get to work on the global water crisis. I get to give back. And there's all sorts of things that I've had the privilege and opportunity to do. But if I was poor, wouldn't be able to do it. So that's why I say it's a silly belief because I grew up with parents and suffering the consequence of that belief. And when you're at the bottom of the hierarchy of needs, you can't be focused on all those other rungs of thinking about something bigger than yourself, right? And so, yeah, I think it's a belief to question and examine very closely and to ask yourself if that belief serves you, number one. And number two, is that belief true? Is that belief true?
And is there anything else you want to share around navigating setbacks, challenges, heartbreak as a business owner? Anything that you haven't shared so
I
far?
mean, just two things, right? Number one, it's par for the course. If it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. And the other one is failure is never final unless you quit. Period. And that's not a platitude. That is like actually, right? It is not final unless you quit. So you don't need to be fearful of failure, because if you make the decision that when you fail, you're going to take the lesson, you're going to leave the rest, and you're going to take it and be better in the future because of it, you're off to the races.
What is your current growing edge?
Oh, that is a great question. Well, I mean, for me, I'm really focused on my leadership right now. So I am working to help all of my companies to become autonomous and self-led. And that's hard. That's hard.
That sounds
And
hard.
yeah, and so that's a multi-year quest, and that requires me becoming a much better leader to even be able to develop people to get them to the point that they can do that. So obviously, I've never done that before. So I'm learning the skills at a leadership level to be able to successfully do that. But I'm up for the challenge.
And this might be connected with what you just said, but what's next for you? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, I want to take the portfolio to 100 million. That's my objective. And the reason why I want to do that is I want to pave the path for women, especially, to dream 100 times bigger and to see what's possible and to be able to go back and teach others how we did it. And it was a huge lesson for me the first year that we achieved 10 million. Two of my clients immediately did that. It's just like the 4 minute mile. Anytime you accomplish anything, people immediately around you believe that they can too. And that's why we should dream big. And that's why we should stay inspired. And that's why we should challenge ourselves, because just the act of pursuing that goal will inspire other people to do the same. And people will achieve things in their life that they never could have otherwise.
I honor the bigness of your vision.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, where can listeners learn more about you? And is there anything in particular that you
Yeah.
want to direct them to?
I would say check out the Kelly Roach Show. I do 2 episodes every single week, and that's really the best place if you want to come get inspired, learn, grow, strategy, family, spirituality, the whole thing. So the Kelly Roach Show is a great place, and I'll give you a link to the business reinvention playbook, which gives people ideas and strategy for how to recreate that alignment when things feel out of sorts, and to tap into your faith in the process of doing that.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for just the leadership that you are bringing into the world.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.